So our next step here now is, once you've got the upper office floor image in place, which is 3.3 metres above the back factory floor, the next step is to start working on some of these upper level framed partition walls. So just like downstairs, I've used a 92mm frame for these walls here that I'm trying to highlight here at the moment. So a 92mm frame for those, that one, and so on and so forth. Just using your upper office floor image as a guide as to where to locate those. Do a ceiling height, or do a top plate height of this floor of 2450. So the 50mm will allow for a 24 high ceiling height with some ceiling battens on some ceiling framing members of some sort. So if we just lay these walls out 2450 high, remembering that when they are sitting beside one of the steel columns, I've used a convention of, like downstairs, an offset of 100mm from the grid line through the centre of the column back to the inside face of the wall. That's when the walls are beside the column. When the walls are either behind or in front of the column, like this one, then use a 125mm offset from the centre line that runs through the centre of the columns. And just lay those walls out at 2450 to start with. When you've done that, the other thing to note in doing that is, this wall in particular here, which is the outside wall of the office, so that's office number 3, in particular this wall, but you might as well keep this for all walls. Make sure when you pull this wall into place, you keep it back 10mm off the face of the tilt-up column. So allow a 10mm little gap using, your tape measure or something like that. I'll just show you off this edge through here. You'll sometimes find you can't do that actually. If I try and put a tape measure line through there now, it won't actually leave a mark for me. So my workaround for that is to initially, you can draw a line at the intersection of your image and the wall, and that'll create a line something like that, and then off that line you can construct your tape measure in the red axis direction of 10mm, for example, in that situation, which means you can then delete that line. If your line, you might zoom in enough, because the line will now be broken into 2 pieces. I'll have one little piece there, and then I'll have another little piece out here where it went past the wall. But that sets out my 10mm set out line now, which is that 10mm off the bottom of the wall. So as you can see through there, I've got a little bit of a gap in through here, that 10mm gap. So when you get that all set out like that, just get rid of this construction line here. When you get that all set out, you'll be ready to start laying out your walls, keeping in mind those other things. Now when you've done that, the next thing to do, we've sorted this out in class, so you'll need to be able to verify this if you weren't in class. But we set out a protractor. Just constrain myself to this face and then hook the protractor on that end point there, and we've come down, I think, in the end at 7.5 degrees rather than the 10 degrees that we originally thought that we were going to set out the tilt-up walls on for the roof at 10 degrees. The reason being, if I orbit around in this direction, and if I have a look square on at the portal there, that's going to mean this roof line here, by the time it's set up about a structural thickness of 150mm or something like that, it means that a box gutter with the roof falling down in this direction and then the roof falling down in this direction off the main factory, you'll pick up a box gutter in this vicinity here, and that'll be in a nice location so that a downpipe can drop straight out of the back of the box gutter, rather than the box gutter at a steeper roof pitch appearing up in this direction somewhere. So once you've established that construction line there, you can start using that construction line to set out the roof. So I'll just pause the video here for the moment. You can go and set out those walls and that construction line. Okay, so when you've got those walls all laid out, and remembering that this point at the top of the wall here is 10mm away from the concrete tilt-up face, you should be able to then construct a 145mm thick roof structure on top of that construction line that you set out at 7.5 degrees there. So here's a roof structure sitting on this corner point here as being a pitching line of the roof. I've come out, I think, 300mm. I think I'll just have a quick look at that to remind myself of that. Yes, I've come out with an overhang of 300mm, a roof thickness of 145, and I've constructed a roof on that construction line until it comes up and hits this concrete tilt-up wall there. So remembering that, importantly, will now be 10mm away from this concrete tilt-up face. So the next thing to do then is that roof will need to be push-pulled back to the front of the factory wall, which is being supported on these end bay columns. And if you remember from the back of the building, the surface of that wall ended up being 280mm offset from the centre line of the grid line. So if I go and grab my tape measure and temporarily find the grid line through here, which must be there, and come out 280, that will find a set out line for me for the front wall of the factory. So if I was to initially push-pull this roof face that you constructed, initially push-pull that roof face to that point, that brings that roof to where the front wall of the factory will be. Now, as well as that, at this point, you'll want to turn on the roofing layer, which is the roofing that covers the factory, so like that, and then around the back here, where this interferes, if you change to the by the way, set up a new layer called something like whatever, office roof, I called this one, before you construct this roof. So all of these components should be on office roof. And then simply at this intersection point here, draw a line across that section of the roof at that point there. That will enable you to then push-pull this part of that roof further. And this is giving you a picture of what this roof might really do. I'll just leave it push-pulled too far for now. We'll need to pull that back to the appropriate amount when we figure out what the back of the wall is doing. But you can probably get a bit of a picture of that there, where this roof now comes to that point. Then because we've drawn that line across, the roof can then be push-pulled back across the rest of it there. So I'll pause the video at that point, and you can get that bit of it done, and we'll take it a little bit further.